Hello and welcome to this week's session in Women of Significance in STEM Leadership series of conversations. And my name is Leah Zalams and I am the founder and lead coach for Z-Axis Leadership Consultancy. So I work with executives and their teams in primarily in leader development, team performance. And today we have with us Dr. Rosina McAlpine. Welcome, Rosina.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Fantastic. And so, Rosina, today we're going to be exploring some of your career highlights, and because you have a very, very fascinating background and career path, and to then really dig into some of your key learnings, some of your success secrets and hints and tips you might have for those women and girls coming after us, because the challenge that, as you know, that we have particularly in STEM industry, so those science and tech are the heart of innovation, and where there is still a lot of inequity, and there's a gender imbalance, gender pay gap, biases, barriers, all of that. And so I'm very keen to explore some of the success traits and the ways of thinking that women like yourself are creating success for yourselves in spite of all of those barriers and reasons why it can't be done, shouldn't be done, won't be done. And because we've got to crack this. And so whilst your original background was, I believe, accounting and commerce, so not that traditional science and biochemistry or engineering. You're very much in the throes of that as an entrepreneur today. And yes, so you bring another flavor of what it means to be carving and creating success and change in a world that is still very much dominated by male norms and male cultures. So I want to hand over to you and ask you then, what do you do and what problem does that solve?
So as the CEO of WinWin Parenting, we develop programs for the workplace to help working parents really manage that home piece so that they can feel confident and effective at home with the parenting, with that work-family interface, so that it frees them up to be the entrepreneur they want to be, or to be the employee, the manager, to take the roles they do. Because traditionally, family was seen as part of family. It wasn't even seen as part of workplace. And little by little, there were moves towards, maybe we do need to worry about employee well-being. So they started to look at mindfulness and health assessments and things like that. And while that is essential, I'm the first person to say that's wonderful, it doesn't help you if your teenager is being bullied at the moment, or your toddler is hanging onto your leg as you're trying to prise them loose to get off to go to work. So the problem we're solving is helping parents be confident and effective in the part that really touches their heart, which is their family, so that they're ready to be focused and productive at work.
And that must be even more accentuated at the moment under the added stress of the implications with COVID and everybody working from home, and the research that you've published recently as well around the onus is still on the women to be taking care of the parents and the schooling and of the children and their schooling in the home. And that, I guess, way of doing things is still current.
It's absolutely current. And really, that was what drove me in the first place, if I'm honest. So as you said, I was in the School of Business at the University of Sydney as an associate professor. And one of my research areas was work-life integration, gender equality. These were my research areas that mattered to me. Making a difference, social entrepreneurism, all of that is my research area. And I spent 6 months at the University of San Diego in the USA on just looking at work-life integration. And that's when I came to the realization that when it comes to work and family, women were behind the 8 ball. The statistics were extraordinary. So I'll just give you a couple of stats while I've got them handy. I read some research back in 1994 when I was doing this earlier research, and it was before children, men and women do equal share around the house for housework. After children, women do more childcare. Mothers are 2 times more likely to pay bills, 4 times more likely to prepare meals, 7 times more likely to do the shopping, and 10 times more likely to do the cleaning. So where does that leave time for, you know, careers, for advancement, for making that difference in the world that you'd like to? So I created this massive model of work and life and how we might be able to support. And I noticed all these, you know, the well-being programs, and then the blaring hole. Nobody is helping parents with parenting. There's this assumption that you should just kind of magically know how to do it. And that's when I started to dabble in the area of parenting. And the other thing that happened was in 2007, I became a mother. So I was experiencing all of this as well. And I wanted to be a different parent. I wanted to be able to give my child the best start in life, but still have a career and make my contribution in the world. And I really didn't know how to do that. So I feel like I came at this from a career point of view, from a, you know, that point, but also from a personal point of view, and tried to make these worlds meet.
And that is still very much a point of challenge, isn't it, for women, the choices and the lack of flexibility in the workplace. And there has been a lot of progress in that area, and then now a lot of focus on encouraging men to take paternal leave. What I picked up on that you said that we were expected just to magically know how to be parents and then make the choices. And that is one of the upshots of COVID, that more people are actually learning how to work from home and realize that a lot of that travel time is now actually can be a walk around the park with their children that they wouldn't have had before.
I must admit, I will tell you, very naively, I am an eternal optimist. I am your rose-colored glasses girl. So I simply assumed that when COVID hit and fathers and mothers were at home together, that they would be sharing equally the responsibilities of home and work, like home and family and work. But again, I'm going to pull out some more stats, you know, very important to me, because I feel like if we don't back up our claims with statistics, with good research, when it's not believable. So what I want to say is that I then came across research. There's research in Australia, Europe, US, Europe, UK, Germany, and even the United Nations, right? So this is a lot of research about what happened in lockdown. And just to give you one stat, US and Europe, the researchers from the Boston Consulting Group surveyed more than 3,000 people and found that working women currently spend an average of 15 hours a week more of unpaid domestic labor than men. 15 hours. That is 2 working days. So we're not talking insignificant amounts. And that's the tip of the iceberg. And the United Nations report says that this study is warning that the pandemic could dilute decades of advancements on gender equality, and that it could last for many years. So I really want to raise this awareness. Now, if I can just go back a couple of steps. When I first started the business, even though there was this gaping hole, I had to spend most of my time educating that there was a problem, because it still wasn't in the work domain that family stress is impacting parents leaving work, not being able to cope, increasing stress, employee mental health and physical health issues.
Mm.
So it started off all about education, 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 and only this tiny proportion of organizations were like, yeah, maybe you have got a good point. So it took quite a long time to actually make this become more mainstream. And as you know, since I was one of the founders, but now there are many companies that offer parenting support. So it has taken on. But COVID brought it home. All of a sudden, there wasn't this distance between the children and the parents. They weren't able to outsource. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean that in a, they weren't able to go to school. They weren't able to go to childcare. All of a sudden, everything was in-house. There was no outsourcing. So I feel, you know how we say there's been many challenges, but there's been many good things. And I think this has brought to the fore that organizations can't ignore the parenting piece anymore. They can't just assume that if we don't support parents at home with all the problems of technologies, you know, emotional intelligence, all of those qualities that they're going to need to be to support their children, that it's going to harm the bottom line. And we know that that's the big thing. The bottom line needs to, there needs to be efficiency, effectiveness, cost effectiveness. And so programs that support parents are very cost effective.
And this again, I would imagine, Rosina, that one of the reasons for your success in being able to get through to these executives, to these business leaders, is, yes, you're very passionate about your cause, let's call it, but you also have a very thorough, research-based, evidence-based, data-based approach to your argument. This is key, and this is one of the skills, the strengths that I see in PhD educated executives and business leaders and entrepreneurs. It's that ability to go deep and look long and hard and be thorough in that, what are we looking at here? So that the stats are not just numbers you've plucked out of thin air, and you are relating the business outcomes to the challenges, but really uncovering maybe some truths that they simply or just haven't been talked about. It's like there's a new subject in the boardroom now. We've got to bring the family elements into the boardroom. So there would be a whole education process now around how you do that. Education does take time, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And what the way I'm going to bring that into entrepreneurship as well is when COVID hit, you know, WinWin Parenting did a lot of face-to-face. We certainly had some online, but it was very much face-to-face, small groups, you know, running workshops within organizations, lunch and learns. And all of a sudden, we're all inside. Everything that I had face-to-face was cancelled. So what did I do? I went and found my customers. We did a survey of over 800 employees across 113 organizations. I had over 5,000 data points, and that was in partnership with a company called Benestar, who are a very large EAP company. And I was able to analyze that and see what were the top 10 challenges for parents. Now, from those top 10 challenges, you can write top 10 programs, right? And that's what we did. And so, of course, those programs were so well received and so effective because they were evidence-based. There's no point creating a program that nobody needs. So we were able to go very quickly, because I have that research base, to be able to gather, ask the right questions, get the platform for getting the information, analyze 5,000 data points into something that was meaningful, and then turn that into an online program and a webinar. So for me, my research skills are, you know, are prized possessions for me. And they inform everything I do, from my parenting, from making a medical decision for myself to, you know, there's not this blind acceptance of whether it's a personal, a business, or something for my family. I'll always do some proper research, not Dr. Google research. research for proper research.
Absolutely. And when we see how the world is changing, the future of work, Rosina, I see so much value in this first business, the WinWin Parenting, the value that's giving to organizations as it is, but also your own transition, the translation of an academic career into entrepreneurship, and how you have leveraged the same skills that created success for you in academia and being able to mentor and teach students. You've transitioned those into entrepreneur land, where you can actually have far more impact and create more social change on a much bigger platform now. I hear the passion for, you saw a problem, you saw how big the problem was, and so you created a project to solve that problem, and now you're creating products that fit specific challenges within that. What stimulates this deep drive to problem solve? I'd love to hear, what's it giving you?
So I've been in academia for 30 years before I left. And so that was a big, imagine an established career of 30 years where I was doing extremely well. I was actually regarded as one of the top 20 researchers in my area in the world. So I wasn't, not doing well there. I was doing very well. But what happened was, so I started, with our academic career, we're able to do 20%, 1 day a week, these research and projects that I was working on. And what I noticed was it started to gain momentum. It was becoming bigger than I was. And there was a choice. And I remember there was a very strong choice point. So I like to do everything properly, and where I can see that it's going to either impact uni work or impact the business, and I wasn't going to be able to meet either of them properly, that was when I had to make that big decision to say, okay, what do I do? Because if you do something, you do it properly, you give it everything. And, once we started to get more and more companies on board, and I realized, hey, I'm going to have to train people, teams, to be able to do this. It's not just going to be me anymore. That's when my husband and I, who are co-founders of the business, I remember the way I made the decision was, it took months, and I would really sit quietly with myself and I'd say, what does my life look like if I stay in academia? And then I'd say, what does my life look like if I go towards entrepreneurship? Now, entrepreneurship was risky, scary. I didn't know if I could make it. Sure, there was a little bit of traction, but there was a clear decision that someone needed to do this in the world, and that someone was me. And I just really wanted to go for it. I felt the difference I could make if I could show you the thousands, and I mean thousands, of feedback, of change, of things that have happened to families because of the win-win programs I've delivered. It is so fulfilling to know that you're making a positive difference in the world. And so, yeah, I just could not do it.
Again, it was still a very deliberate, considered, considering, many aspects, and not just follow your heart and you will never work another day in your life. You actually were working full-time, building a side hustle.
Yes.
A professor building a side hustle. I love it. When the time was right, and when you could see if there was some traction, and now it was either you needed to put more time into it to expand it, or not. And thank goodness you have, because as you say, the ripple effect of that and the feedback is the proof that this is very much something that's needed in our world right now. So it's like that ikigai diagram of when you're doing what you love, you're good at what you do. It's needed in the world, and people will pay for it. These are the 4 primary drivers of what creates that fulfilling career or business. I think you've demonstrated that so effectively, and again, how you've leveraged what you had, finding a real world problem and then being very strategic and deliberate in creating the processes to create financial and commercial success.
And I think that's where entrepreneurs potentially fail. Following your heart is one part. Let's remember that. Heart is one part, not the whole. I had the academic background of education and creating programs, of researching and finding out what customers need. My customers used to be students, now my customers are parents and organizations. Importantly, understanding cash flows, understanding ins and outs from that point of view. But also, I think what drove that as well is my love of learning. I realized I didn't know about sales. I've never had to sell in my life. I didn't know where to find my customers. So there was a lot of learning that had to go on across all of the different areas of business. And I think that's where entrepreneurs, if they're just following their heart and they're not looking at the financial aspect, the marketing aspect, you know, all the foundations, the technical aspects. We had so many technical aspects, the platforms we were going to deliver on, the apps that we needed to develop for our customers, the accounting systems, the customer relation management systems. I mean, these are all things that go to making a successful business. It's not just, oh, I'm passionate, I really like what I'm doing, yay, let's go out there in the world.
Exactly. It is very multifaceted. There are lots of things to consider. And in terms of mentors or role models, or did you have guiding lights, or is this all, are you purely self-directed?
When I was very young, I had the blessing of the best grandmother in the world. I am talking role model extraordinaire. This was a woman who lived through the war, who told me her stories of from childhood, how determined she was in life. What that woman created inspired me. I used to say, because I'm of her, I must be able to do like her. So her stories of courage and challenge through the war, you know, and raising children and moving. She moved 3 countries. She spoke 3 languages. She was born in 1912. So this was just an extraordinary woman. Anyway, one of the things that she said to me all throughout my life, and this was with her stories, don't let anyone tell you there's something you can't do in this world. This was her motto, and I'll never forget it, because whenever there's been difficulties, her words are there for me. And of course, there have been so many difficulties in life and challenges with the business and personal and professional, but those words, don't you let anybody tell you there's something you can't do. And her, you know, words were with passion and heart and hard work, good hard work. And she had that hard work ethic. And so my grandmother was a role model. I have to say that Oprah has been a really big role model for me, because where she's come from and where she is and how she got there and her wish for supporting the world. I love that. I felt like it was such a role model to me, where I've come from, where I can go to, and my wish to support the world. And then, of course, I feel like I was very lucky to be part of a incubator program, an accelerator program, where there were many role models of different companies that I worked with, entrepreneurs that I worked with, who were on the same journey with me. So sometimes they're a bit up front, sometimes they're a bit behind. I'm very grateful that I have wonderful role models in my life.
And yes, having that role model really early in life, there's nothing that replaces that. The leading women, the most have had someone really powerful that was that role model and gave them that kind of belief that you can create success even if it doesn't look like it's happening right now. There's an element of that, someone else giving you belief before you've got it for yourself. There's either that driver, or the other side of the coin where they had it really tough and they're doing it because they had it really tough. And so it's that driver, that it's the proving that they can do it in spite of where they've come from. And this is more like the Oprah story.
Yes.
So it's fascinating that our start in life, whether good or bad, we can make something of it, but we've got to be putting ourselves in environments that can nurture us. And this is what I'm hearing that you've done for yourself with the accelerator program. You put yourself in yet another learning environment to learn the ropes of how do you actually do entrepreneurship successfully. And I see that is also, if you look at what are the traits and the skills of STEM education, STEM trained professionals that we're seeing and wanting more of in leadership, in the boardrooms, in government, in executive teams. It is this deep ability for problem solving and analysis and a strategic approach to a process driven approach, but definitely with a vision and an outcome and a so what for why the research is important. Like, why invest in the science? There's a vision still driving that process. It is about what skills and which tools do we pull out of our bag to use. How we think is just so foundational to everything we do, isn't it?
I 100% agree. I think with entrepreneurship, if you don't have, like, a lot of people laugh at me because I am Miss Rose Colors glasses. I'm always looking on the bright side, no matter what happens, I can always find something good that comes out of it. And I truly believe, on the entrepreneurial journey, if you don't have those rose-colored glasses, if you don't have that optimism, that positivity, because, it's such a rocky road. I mean, there are, I think, a tiny number of success stories that go from 0 to 100. But most stories, you read the biographies of the Bransons and all those, they've been through hell and back, right? And the thing is that at any point they could have stopped. That's that thing when you say, if you think you can't, you can't. And if you keep going, one day you will get there. And I'll tell a funny story. I used to be a smoker. And I was determined to quit, but I would go to this quit class, and time again, I'd quit for a few weeks and then I'd be back. And I said to the guy, I remember his name, I said, Abilio, do you think it's worth me coming anymore? I'm like, I could teach you this course now, how many times I've been. And he said to me, as long as you're coming, I know one day you'll quit. And you know what? That was the time. And so it's been a good lesson in my life that if you keep going, and that's with WinWin, after, all the pivots, all the movements, all the changes, who knew that COVID was going to be such a huge impact on our business? Like, it's like we've been preparing for this, but could not have foreseen this in any way, shape or form. And yet, of course, another pivot, but with everything behind us to be able to do it.
Preparation. Who could have predicted that COVID? Well, there were some people that we weren't listening to the scientists then, were we? And here you are, but thank goodness you are able to deliver because of the work and the preparation you've done till now. So in terms of the positivity and the optimism, what has been one of your biggest challenges you are really proud to have overcome, and how did you do that?
Probably the biggest challenges that we've overcome are at every step of the way, whether it's developing an app or whether it's the new marketing, there's always been, how do you find the funds to be able to make this happen? And sometimes it just took ingenuity, beg, borrow, steal, good luck. So I think funding a project this big, being able to survive financially as a family, we're raising a teenage boy, we've got to make that work as well. So I feel that's been a huge obstacle. And then in the early days, spending so much time educating, and it's taking so long to get someone over the line. In those early days, it could take 6 to 12 months to get a client. I'm not joking. 6 to 12 months of education, touch points. And then all of a sudden they come back and they go, yep, we want it all. But you'd be like just on the poverty stage thinking we're going to survive, and then it would come. But it was that very much trying to stay afloat would probably be our biggest challenge, even though we are, both my husband and I are accountants. We are thrifty, frugal, we know what to do with money, we spent it wisely. But I'd say the biggest challenge was being able to stay afloat, having cash flow in our business to be able to make the changes. Now, we launched last year in New Zealand. This year we had our first foray in Asia because of COVID. And a few years ago, we launched in the US. Now that all takes money, that takes connections and money. So I really feel like being courageous, overcoming obstacles by having the goal, saying, okay, this is how much we need and this is how we're going to find it. So when we were developing our app, we were able to find a government grant that paid half with us. So every dollar we put in, they put in $1. So I'd say for me, financial challenges have probably been the biggest, and the faith that one day that customer will come, even if it takes 6 to 12 months. And other times it'll be one email or a connection on LinkedIn and they've bought the program. So yeah. Tenacity,
and also faith in your goal, faith in your vision. How do you nurture that? And I'm hearing work ethic, I'm hearing teamwork with your husband, I'm hearing being really resourceful about who you're asking and how you're asking. And I'm hearing a lot of asking as well, Rosina, that you're not afraid to ask for help. And isn't that something that a lot of us need to do that more often and faster? We can't do it on our own. And as you say, you've got to have the faith that it will happen. The positivity, the faith, you had all the evidence there to say, yes, there's every reason this business is going to deliver. So you've just got to hang in there. And sometimes you just have to hang in there.
So true.
You?
I think that's true. And remember, with entrepreneurship, we're always going to be at the leading edge. So we're always going to be thought leaders. We're always going to have to educate others, because if it's not new, like, why would we do it? Like, what's the point? And one of the things that was very interesting, when white lady funerals came out.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important message for every entrepreneur. And the message is this: the funeral industry was so established. Men were in there. That's pretty much all it was. It was one way of taking care of people who have passed. And I thought, there is no way you could innovate. How could you innovate with that? And along came white lady funerals. And that's when I talk to entrepreneurs and I say, what is your point of difference? What is it? What is that missing point of difference and look what's happened here in such an established. So don't feel like, even in established industries. Now, you'd say parenting, established, right?
As a thing.
Yeah, as a thing. It's been around forever. And the researchers have been studying, there's thousands of studies on it. If you look at parenting experts, there's thousands of them in the world. But you know what? They weren't talking to corporate. They were talking to parents. And I was skipping the parent and going straight to the corporate and saying, you know what? As part of social responsibility. So that's my white lady. That's my white lady. Why was I different? I was different because I was white lady. I said, our client is going to be the corporates. It's not going to be the parents who don't have the funds or the time. It's the corporates who are taking families out of the family home into the workplace. What are they giving back? And what they can give back is to support them to be the best parent they can be, so they feel absolutely excited about being at work and making that difference, because home is good. Everything's going okay at home.
That's such a great analogy, bringing us to the point of what is your unique value proposition? What is your unique message? Whether you're coming out of university and going into your first role, or whether you're mid-career, or whether you're considering which direction you should take. I think we are definitely in the era of everybody needs that white lady message to be really clear about what is different and unique about me, and what can I do for you that is unique and different because of my white lady skills and attributes. I think that's a fabulous analogy, Rosina.
I've been
Thank
using
you.
That one.
Yes.
It's my pleasure. I've been using that one when I mentor entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it applies, I think, at every stage. I mean, when we think a lot of corporates are crumbling, the university system is hemorrhaging. It is about how do we leverage what we have and then find that gap to really communicate what our point of difference is, because I believe every individual has that point of difference.
Yes.
We just got to find it and then communicate it in ways that is pertinent and understood by the audience we want to speak to.
I agree with you. And the other thing I wanted to add that I feel is an essential quality of an entrepreneur is that ability to see just the next step. Like, you've got a really big vision. So you've got the mountain in the background, but there's no way of knowing how you're going to get to that background, to that mountain. We have to sit in uncertainty for so long. Yes, hold the vision, but there's so much uncertainty. And the way I talk to entrepreneurs about this is I say, when you go on a long journey and it's at night, all you've got is your headlights. All you can do is drive that bit. And as soon as you get to there, the next bit reveals itself. So I say to people, yes, have your big picture, but I just need to know what you're going to do tomorrow. I don't really need to know what you're going to do for the next 5 or 10 years. What are you going to do tomorrow? And then tomorrow, after you've done that thing, something else will reveal itself. And definitely that's how it's been for our journey. And sometimes that revelation is a pivot. Flexibility is so important. And I think uncertainty, flexibility, I highly recommend everyone to do some accounting. Absolutely. Know the lifeblood of your business, your cash flow. Understand how to read a balance sheet if you're going to go in, or have someone next to you who can help you with it. So I really do think that. And finally, I think I'm the eternal student. And I think an entrepreneur needs to be the eternal student. How else do you keep moving into new spaces with technology, with knowledge, with keeping up with the research, with keeping up with your customer needs? I mean, let's look at it. So many businesses, the journey that their customers were on, they've fallen completely off, and they've had to find absolutely new ways of being. So, that constant flexibility. Hey, pivoting. You've got to pivot, move with the times.
Well, I love that, the analogy of the bamboo, to be as strong as the bamboo, but you've got to be able to bend in the wind. And I think to be able to bend in the wind, and you've got to, like you say, have the vision for the top of the mountain, but just be focused on what is that next step. How far can that light shine just to get this next piece done and to finish that piece.
Yes.
We've got to finish each step. We've got to reflect. We've got to have that process and keep ourselves moving forward. Yeah. And accept that they're living in uncertainty and ambiguity and volatility. That is actually our reality. Rosina, I'm just conscious of time, but I'd love to hear a closing comment today. If you look back to where you were 10 years ago or 20 years ago, if you were to give one tip of advice to your younger self, that's something you know now that you wish you had have known then.
I'm gonna do 2 tips if that's all right. First one
is
self-care. Oh my gosh, how many
Mm.
times I've burnt myself out on this journey. And the biggest wake up call for me, which is when I turned around, was when my son said to me, I want the old mummy back.
Oh.
Now I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, well, you used to be kind and used to have fun with me and you used to play with me a lot. And this was in those very first days where I moved from academia to full-time WinWin. And I was like, wow, I've lost sight. And that's what WinWin is. It's families, it's connection. So and the mouths of babes. So self-care and family first.
So you had to drink your own Kool-Aid.
I had to drink my own Kool-Aid. And so I do that now. I take good care of myself. I take time out. And I think that's a real key to having great outcomes. But secondly, if I could have told my younger self that every skill, every experience, good and bad, has brought me to who I am today, and to love every experience, because I have learned from the terrible and from the wonderful, and I haven't appreciated it as much now in my 50s. I see that every one of those learnings, every one of those stumbles, every one of those what I thought were mistakes has brought me to here, and it's helped me succeed. So enjoy every success, enjoy every failure. It's going to culminate into who you are as a person and your business.
That is such good advice, Rosina. And how often do we need to hear that the journey is life? And I think that takes me to Viktor Frankl's perspective on meaning, and around finding the meaning in the thing that you're doing. Find meaning in where you want to go, but find meaning in the now.
Yes.
And I think when we put that lens over everything we experience, I think it does help us to manage through those big, tough feelings. I'm sure there must have been at least maybe once or twice you might have considered quitting. I have to ask.
Absolutely. And that's when my grandma's, don't you let anyone tell you, and just hang in there a bit longer. And what's the next step? I just told myself that. What's the one thing you can do? What's that next step? And they've all held me in such great stead. Remember the lights, the headlights. Remember that every journey takes 1,000 steps. And so one of the things I talk to young people about now with life skills is, don't have that instant gratification. It's not going to get you anywhere. We need to be able to keep striving. We need to be able to take the time. We need to grow into who we need to be for that next step. And I see that now, but I didn't see that back then.
I know this is the value of hindsight and wisdom, and we hope that that some of our experiences is going to help the younger ones coming through perhaps move through those pain points faster, or maybe skip some of them. But we know everybody has to have their journey. It is about the toughening up on so many levels. Then being kind to ourselves and putting ourselves first, so that we can give from a place of love, that we can be tolerant and really know what is okay and what's not okay, because this is what comes through entrepreneurship. And really what I'm hearing is you're running the biggest science experiment there is. So yes, we've got ideas about outcomes. We can't control those, but we can only ever control that next best step, like you say.
Yeah. And as you said, control our emotions. While we might not be able to do much about what's happening in our world, our inner world is fully our responsibility. So chill out and get on with it.
Exactly. Wonderful. That's a great note to end on, Rosina. So if people want to connect with you, learn more about your programs, even getting some of your programs and running in their organizations, where's the best place to connect with you?
So our website is winwinparenting.com. No spaces. Excellent. No dashes.
Yep. And what about on LinkedIn?
Yep, drrosina.com. Yeah, Dr. Rosina on LinkedIn, Dr. Rosina McAlpine.
Excellent. Beautiful. I'll make sure that those details are on the recording as well. And I've really valued our conversation. So many gold nuggets and so much fun. Like, it's just such a joy. And
Thank
I
you
think
so much for letting me recall all of these amazing experiences. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosina.
Thanks.